I mean, this is terrorism. They are allowing it to get worse. It is a false flag in that they are blocking any real relief.
It is very strange that the various methods that are available to bring this to an end very quickly are not being adopted, particularly the use of supertankers with the enormous pumps that they have on board. They can just go along literally vacuuming this stuff off the surface of the ocean, and you can run it, once you've taken it out with a pump, you can run it through what's called a centrifuge, which will separate out the seawater and leave you with the crude oil, which you then put straight into the tanks, and then you take it along to the refinery. It's perfectly good oil, nothing wrong with it. Oil and water don't mix. All you've got to do is separate them by a centrifuge, and you can use the oil and put the water back in the sea. And they're not doing it. They're not doing it because I think Obama wants to do what the left so often do. They want to teach the oil industry a lesson and say, well, you've made this mess, we're not going to allow it to be cleaned up so that everybody sees what a big mess it is. Now, that may sound a little bit extreme, but look at it this way. There are methods they could have used to put an end to this a long time ago. There are methods they could certainly be using to protect the estuaries, to protect the shorelines. And yet, somehow, quite a lot of it that ought to be happening isn't happening. And there are stories emerging from all the way along the coastline that the obvious measures are not being taken. Now, to some extent, this may be just members of the public thinking things can be done.
No, they're blocking them. They're blocking them.
Well, that is the thing. There seems to be actual obstruction. And again, one has to put the other side and say, maybe there are operational reasons. But I'll tell you this for free. I don't think that we are being let into the secret of how this is being run or why it's being run the way it is. And again, in a democracy, call me old-fashioned, but I think when something like this happens, there should be daily briefings in detail about what is being done and what is not being done and why it is or is not being done. And I don't think we're getting the frankness, not so much from BP as from Obama and his administration, as I would expect in a democracy. And part of the reason for this is that the mainstream media, of course, are all rooting for Obama, and they don't want to bring their hero down by showing how useless he is in a crisis, or, as it may be, how much he's trying to exploit the crisis. Now, I hesitate to say that is what he is trying to do. But I am unhappy at the course of events, and it certainly raises that question in one's mind.
Well, Lord Monckton, I don't know if you probably haven't seen the video, but it's got hundreds of thousands of views. Senator Kyle has also put out a statement that, yes, he was in a meeting with Obama, and Obama said, I'm not going to stop the crime. I'm not going to put troops down there. We have foreigners. They've shut down national parks 80 and 100 miles into Arizona. It is war zone bedlam. And Obama said, I like that. I want that to continue, so I get amnesty. He told a senator this. And we know the chief of staff, Emanuel, says on Wall Street Journal television, don't let a good crisis go to waste. So this is their modus operandi. This is what they do.
Well, it's certainly worrying, and I would think that if President Obama actually said to the senator what the senator reports him as having said, and again, I wasn't there, so I don't know whether it was true, but I have no reason to suppose the senator isn't telling the truth, then I think there is certainly a stateable case that Obama has committed high treason and should be removed from office immediately. If he is actually saying, right, we're going to let the borders down and let everybody come pouring in, knowing that there are laws in place and people in place that are supposed to stop that happening, if he wants to change the law on immigration, he has to go to Congress to do it. He can't do that by executive order, and if he tries, he'll have to resign.
But it's even more than that. Kyle said he was in the meeting, and Obama said we're not going to let this crisis go away. The murder. Mexico is a failed state. I'm sure you've seen 22...
it's a tragedy what's been going on there. And, of course, people want to escape it, and they want to escape to their kindlier neighbor to the north. All of that one understands, and indeed one sympathizes. But it is not for the president to make executive orders nullifying acts of Congress. Indeed, it's against the Constitution for him to do that.
Absolutely. We're running out of time. And one of the biggest subjects is how they're counter-striking at you, who really is who has come to the fore as, the leader of the anti-man-made global warming fraud. And so we're going to go to break, but you've got about 2 minutes now, then we'll come back in the final segment and have you go over this. Break down their latest manufactured assault on you, Lord Monckton.
Right. 8 months ago, I made a rather well-known speech in St. Paul, Minnesota, to a businessmen's audience, to the Minnesota Free Market Institute, in which I explained my doubts about the science of climate change and economics, and also I tacked on a 4-minute segment which has been very widely viewed. I think 2.5 million people on the main website and another 2.5 million scattered over the internet have seen this peroration, where I set out the world government plans of the UN, quoting from the actual treaty draft of September the 15th last year, treaty draft for Copenhagen, which failed, I'm glad to say. But that speech has attracted so much attention that whoever it is that's behind this global warming scare seems to have decided that they wanted me to be personally discredited because of that particular speech. And so a professor at a Bible college in Minnesota called St. Thomas University, a Professor Abraham, who is not even a climate scientist, he's a professor of fluid mechanics or something, in the engineering department, decided to do an 83-minute slideshow with him talking over 115 slides, which he's put out all over the internet, and all the climate extremist websites are running it, basically saying that everything I said was nonsense from start to finish, and it's very detailed, and it's very vicious. You know, he accuses me of misrepresentation, of making stuff up.
All right, Lord Monckton, when we come back, and maybe I can twist your arm unless you have another show coming up for 5 minutes to the next hour, so you have 10 minutes. I'm going to try to give you the floor, because you've got this big paper coming out that we'll post at Infowars.com as soon as it's out, where you go through and just document the straw man baloney. Lord Christopher Monckton's our guest. I'm Alex Jones. Scienceandpublicpolicy.org is the website. Lord Monckton, in the interest of time, go through this assault, because it's another example of understanding their tactics, and we can actually use their assaults to illustrate the deception, and it can be quite informative. So you've got the floor. Break down what happened.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, Professor Abraham from the St. Thomas Bible College in Minnesota decided that he would produce this very long, 83 minutes with 115 slides, attempt at a rebuttal of my talk in St. Thomas, in St. Paul, Minnesota, 8 months ago, which has gone viral all over the web. And he wanted to tear this down because, I don't know whether he's working with the people who are driving the scare, who try to discredit anyone who dares to suggest there might be another side to the story, or whether he did it off his own bat, I don't know. However, I wrote to him about 2 weeks ago, and I said, look, here are several hundred questions about what you've said. Questions about why you have misstated what I said, passed on those misstatements to scientists elsewhere, got them to attack the misstatements, and then printed their attacks on me as though they were attacking my words and not his words. And he's also got his own mathematics wrong. He doesn't know any of the science of climate change. And all of that, he says, you know, I'm the professor here, Monckton's a layman. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's paid by the denialist industry. He's paid by fossil fuel industries, which I'm not, but that's what he says. The whole thing is lies from start to finish. What's interesting about this one, though, is that I have provided an unusually detailed refutation, point by point, of every single one of the several hundred lies, and I mean several hundred deliberate falsehoods that Abraham has perpetrated. This man is a liar, a cheat. I mean, he makes Al Gore look like a saint. He's utterly, utterly corrupt. This is not a man who deserves to hold any academic office whatsoever. And what he did was deliberately to divorce his talk from mine, so that unless you were watching my talk at the same time as his, you wouldn't realize how clever his lies were. It took him months to put this together. And it took me a week to write him an 84-page letter with several hundred, I think it's 450 questions in it. And it's that letter which I'm going to let you have on your website in a few days' time. I'm going to let him have one more chance, because I'm very fair to people when they do this sort of thing, to reply properly. But so far, his reply says nothing more than the following. This is my 84-page letter that I sent to him. He says, I'm replying to your letter on behalf of myself and on behalf of Father Dennis Deese, who is the president of the university, to whom I'd also written, complaining about Abraham and asking for him to be investigated. And Father Dennis Deese is washing his hands of it, just like Pontius Pilate. And the university, therefore, is not going to investigate any of this. And Abraham simply says, I stand by my original position. So let's have a look at Abraham's original position. The first thing that struck me as odd is that he didn't even tell me he was doing this in 8 months. Time and time again in his attack on me, he says, well, he doesn't even tell us what his sources are. At no time did he lift the phone or send me an email and ask me what my sources were. That's what an academic would normally do. So there's clear bad faith there. Bad faith also in Abraham's failure to let me know he was going to do this before he published it so that I would have the chance to publish a contemporaneous and detailed refutation. No, he wanted to get a clear run at it so that he could get all the left-wing websites to tear down my reputation, and the newspaper blogs over here saying I am the fallen idol of the climate skeptics, this kind of thing. There was also malice. I mean,
but they always do those hoaxes. They always say,
yeah.
I mean, they've said that the ice caps completely melted. I mean,